This presentation was developed for a series of congestion management workshops that were held by SPC in the fall of 2007. The intent of the workshops was to introduce or reintroduce municipal managers, municipal engineers, transit authority staff, county planners, PennDOT staff, and other transportation practitioners to SPC's regional congestion management process, and to kick off a new initiative aimed at getting the CMP out to a wider audience and getting more input from local stakeholders into the process. At the end of this session, you should have enough information and understanding to answer the questions you see here and to become an active participant in the regional congestion management process. So let's get started. What is a CMP? The official definition is a systematic process that provides information on transportation system performance and alternative strategies to alleviate congestion and enhance the mobility of persons and goods. In a nutshell, it's a planning process aimed at reducing traffic congestion and getting the most out of our existing transportation infrastructure. Given the fiscal constraints that municipal governments and other public entities are under, we do not have the luxury of affording a lot of new capacity of our existing road and transit systems, so we need to make sure we're getting the most out of what we have. That's what the CMP is all about. But beyond just being the right thing to do, another reason that we have a regional congestion management process is because federal legislation says we have to. Each metropolitan planning organization, like SPC, with a population over 200,000 people, is mandated to have a CMP. The CMP takes on even greater significance in air quality non-attainment areas like Southwestern Pennsylvania because projects that propose to add capacity to the roadway network have to be consistent with the regional CMP in order to receive environmental clearances. This slide shows what the Federal Highway Administration considers to be the key elements of a CMP. You start out by defining a network of congested roads that are perceived to be congested or where you think congestion is likely to occur because of development or other activity in the area. You define performance measures that can be used to gauge how congested the roadways are. Then you set up a monitoring plan to measure congestion on these roadways. Once you have data and analysis showing how congested the roadways are, and you start to identify some of the causes of that congestion, you evaluate various strategies for managing congestion. Finally, you monitor how effective those strategies were at reducing congestion, and you modify your approach if needed. As you will see, the CMP for Southwestern Pennsylvania is designed to cover all of these key elements. SPC's congestion management process was first established in 1995 through a group called the Interagency Technical Task Force on Congestion Management. That group was made up of the 3 PennDOT district traffic engineers, SPC staff, City of Pittsburgh Public Works, Port Authority of Allegheny County, and Allegheny County Public Works, with input from the county planning departments. That group defined the original CMP network, which has evolved over time to the network we have today. The current monitoring network in southwestern Pennsylvania consists of 103 corridors throughout the 10-county region. Today, the primary body for dealing with the CMP is SPC's Regional Transportation Operations and Safety Committee. It takes SPC 3 years to complete a full data collection cycle on the 103 corridors in the region. These data collection activities include performing travel time runs during the morning and evening peak traffic hours on each corridor. Data collection activities are typically broken up into 2 data collection seasons each year, one in the spring and one in the fall. Although it takes 3 years to complete a full cycle, data and analysis are updated on SPC's website after a new data collection season is complete. That way, stakeholders don't have to wait until the 3-year cycle is complete in order to get the most recent data. So in effect, the CMP is a continuous update process. After a 3-year data collection cycle is complete, we reassess the network and make adjustments as needed. We may add a new corridor to the system, take a corridor out of active monitoring, combine or split corridors, or adjust the limits or node points of a corridor to make data collection activities easier. SPC's Transportation Operations and Safety Committee provides input and makes recommendations for this triennial update process. SPC utilizes 3 primary performance measures for its regional congestion management process: travel time, speed, and delay. We're able to take these basic performance measures and use them to calculate additional measures such as total delay, which also factors in the traffic volumes in the corridor. This performance measure information is available on our website in chart and graph form for all 103 corridors in the region. Each corridor page also includes a land use map of the corridor, a link to PennDOT's highway video log where you can take a virtual drive of the corridor, and a data archive section where you can look up data and analysis from previous cycles of the program. One important definition in SPC's congestion management process is the definition of delay. SPC calculates delay based on the posted speed limit. To do this calculation, you take the ideal travel time, which is the amount of time it would take to travel the corridor at the posted speed limit with no traffic, and subtract that from the measured travel time that was collected in the field. The resulting value is what we call delay. Another way that delay is sometimes calculated is by using free flow speed, which is the speed that motorists would typically travel the corridor when there is no traffic. This free flow speed is often higher than the posted speed limit. It is important to recognize the distinction between these two methods for calculating delay and to recognize that SPC's congestion management process defines delay based on the posted speed limit rather than free flow speed. One of the things you will realize when looking at various corridors in the region is that you need to compare apples to apples. It's not very useful to compare data from a corridor like the Parkway East or the Parkway West to a corridor like Route 19 in downtown Zelienople or to Liberty Avenue in the city of Pittsburgh. These are very different types of roads, and travelers' expectations are very different on a city street than they are on a freeway or expressway where they expect to be able to travel at 50 or 60 miles per hour. Another part of this is because motorists are typically exposed to the higher congestion levels on city streets for much shorter distances than they would be on a freeway or expressway. So in order to compare congestion levels between different corridors, SPC uses a classification system based on the Highway Capacity Manual that allows corridors to be sorted into different groups based on their characteristics and functional attributes. These classifications and comparisons are also on SPC's website and are updated periodically when new data collection seasons are complete. So what do we do once we collect and compile all the data and analysis discussed thus far? Keep in mind that this is a process, so the focus isn't simply to collect data. We want to do something with that data. The second part of the process is the strategies component, where we are tasked with determining which congestion management strategies are most appropriate for each corridor. This is an area where SPC sees the CMP Working Groups playing a big role in the process. But before we discuss that, let's quickly run through the 25 strategies in our regional congestion management toolbox. Definitions for each of these strategies can be found on our website. Demand management strategies are strategies that attempt to address congestion at the root of the problem by reducing the number of vehicles on the road. These are things that can help to change travel patterns and travel behavior by encouraging fewer single occupancy trips, travel in off-peak hours, and changes in land use that reduce the amount of auto-oriented trips that are generated. As you can see, these aren't all strategies that can be implemented by a metropolitan planning organization like SPC, or even a state department of transportation. The idea behind the CMP is to integrate both public and private efforts at the local, state, and regional levels in order to get everyone pulling in the same direction with regard to congestion management. Modal options are strategies aimed at giving people transportation choices beyond just driving alone in their cars. These include everything from improved transit service to bicycle and pedestrian facilities to park and ride lots that can facilitate carpool and vanpool programs. Again, some of these strategies are things that an MPO can do, some are things that a DOT can do, some are things that transit agencies can do, some things can be implemented by local municipalities, and other things may work best in partnership with the private sector. Operational improvement strategies contain a lot of standard traffic engineering solutions that work at improving the supply side of the transportation system by making it work more efficiently. This includes strategies like adding turn lanes at intersections, improving and coordinating traffic signals, and the development of intelligent transportation systems. Again, implementation responsibilities for these strategies varies. Capacity adding strategies are typically the last thing that transportation professionals consider because they are the most expensive, they take the most time, and they can have negative community and environmental impacts. Capacity projects can also have the effect of encouraging additional outlying development and inducing more travel, which can cause the facility to become congested again and negate the investment you've made in capacity upgrades. One thing to keep in mind when we talk about any CMP strategies is that the strategies may not actually be implemented on the road where you are trying to reduce congestion. It's possible to reduce congestion on one road by making improvements offline on a side street or an adjacent road. This can be the case with capacity adding strategies and with other strategies as well. So once we collect and compile all the data and analysis discussed at the beginning of this presentation, we are tasked with assessing these 25 different congestion management strategies and determining which ones are most appropriate for each corridor. To do this, we use the strategy evaluation matrix shown here. Two factors are used to evaluate each strategy: the suitability of the strategy for that particular corridor and the potential benefit of the strategy in that corridor. When looking at the suitability or feasibility of a particular strategy, you have to consider things like the type of roadway, the cost of implementing the strategy, potential right-of-way requirements, and potential environmental and community impacts. An A rating means that the strategy is feasible and would be relatively easy to implement. B means that it's feasible but would be a little harder to implement. C means that it's feasible but would be very difficult to implement. And D means that it's just not an appropriate strategy for that corridor. A second factor that is assessed is the potential benefit of the strategy. Benefit is gauged on a 3-point scale, with 1 meaning the strategy is likely to have a really positive impact on reducing congestion, 2 meaning the strategy is likely to have moderate benefit, and 3 meaning the strategy isn't likely to have much impact on reducing congestion. Keep in mind that some of these strategies may have other benefits, like safety or energy savings or other things. But what we're looking at here is strictly the congestion relieving benefits. How much impact is this strategy likely to have on reducing congestion in this particular corridor? Evaluating congestion strategies is a significant role that SPC sees for the proposed congestion management work groups. As such, SPC has developed an internet-based tool that can be used by workgroup members to provide input on strategy evaluations. The web form is linked to a database that compiles the input and allows SPC to create a series of matrices for each corridor. These matrices help to identify where the consensus lies on various strategies in that corridor and can help prioritize strategies for each corridor. The prioritization of congestion management strategies can then be used to inform decision-making for the long-range plan and the TIP programming process. But prioritizing congestion management strategies is only one of the roles proposed for the CMP work groups. SPC also sees these work groups as a way to gut-check the travel time and delay information that's collected in the field to make sure it makes sense and reflects what travelers experience on a typical day. The work groups are also a way to help pinpoint the sources of congestion, including sources of non-recurring congestion. These work groups will also be working to establish performance thresholds for each corridor. It's unrealistic to expect that all the roads in southwestern Pennsylvania will be free from congestion all the time. What this step will do is set realistic goals for what an acceptable level of congestion would be for each corridor. This will provide a benchmark from which to measure the effectiveness of strategy implementation activities. The final role of the work groups will be to report on strategy implementation activities. As indicated previously, SPC, as the regional planning agency, is often not the implementing agency for a lot of these strategies. We rely on PennDOT, the local municipalities, the counties, the transit authorities, and our other partners to help implement and report on the strategies in the CMP. This is an area that has traditionally been lacking in congestion management programs across the country, and SPC feels that the working groups will give us a good way to get a handle on implementation and provide a feedback loop into the process. By bringing all the players to the table, it will also provide additional opportunities for cooperation and coordination between various levels of government and various agencies. That way, the congestion management efforts of these organizations can be implemented in a complementary way rather than potentially working at cross purposes. The main resource for SPC's congestion management process is the congestion management section of our website, where you can find information about the program, look up data on particular corridors, See which strategies are being implemented and find out how effective different strategies have been in other parts of the region. If you have questions or feedback related to the congestion management process, you will also find contact information for the CMP project manager on the website.